Hey everyone, it's Pete here with the River Kings. I'm out here on Hammock Ridge enjoying a beautiful fall day. It's time for another hammock tarp review for winter tarps. Today it's a good one. It's the Hammock Gear Journey. First impressions on the Journey. Just holding the tarp in the stuff sack, it feels good. It's not heavy. They've kind of got a small stuff sack for as big a tarp as it is. It's a 12-foot Ridgeline, which you know I like 12 or 13 feet. It's just the right size bag here, stuff sack. It's not too small that you can't get it in. It's not so big that it's got extra flap everywhere. So initial impressions are good. It's a seal poly tarp, which you know, the two choices basically are seal nylon and seal poly. This doesn't retain as much water and it won't stretch as much, so those are the advantages. Right off the bat, I got mine with the little D-rings on it. You can also get it with the line locks, which is sort of the going thing now, but it's just not the way I like to do things, so I opted for the D-rings. So just know that you can get it with the line locks. Let's go ahead and string it up. Okay, we got the tarp hung. The tarp is it's a fantastic tarp. It's a lot of high quality stitching. Things are sewn in just the right places. I do like that the patch for the tie out and the center tie out is on the outside. That gives you a chance to waterproof the inside a little better. On some tarps, this patch is on the inside and the tab is on the outside, sandwiched in the tarp. But it's hard to get a good waterproofing on the inside only. And you can waterproof the tarp, but it has to be done on the outside. It just doesn't look as good. Neither here nor there. I just prefer the little reinforcement patch to be on the outside. Another thing I like with the Journey here is they give you an extra attachment point, in this case a D-ring, here in the center of the bottom edge. And if you watch my hand, if I push on that, simulating heavy wind, that's going to have a lot of deflection. But if I can tarp that out, it's going to really help in a high wind situation. All right, so on this side of the tarp, I've got the doors pretty much shut. And again, it doesn't seal. If you wanted to get that to seal off to stop airflow, you'd have to make some modifications to that. But the doors are a good shape. They're in the right place. They give you plenty of footprint on the inside. There's one thing about the door though, let me show you. So with a door tarp, you don't always want the doors in the closed configuration. If you're coming in and out loading your hammock on the tree or you know, just using the shelter, you want to be able to come in and out and have that egress open for you without having to squeeze through or duck under. Some tarps have a toggle where you can toggle your door out of the way. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Some tarps, the door, when you fold it up, perfectly matches with the tie out points so that you could just clip into that. This one does not, so it doesn't really make it, as you see. So you would have to take a string and kind of tie it there loosely, or maybe back over the top or something. I'll show you what I did here. I just kind of did a little quick overhand. I mean, it's holding it out of the way. It's just not as convenient as when I can come all the way over and just clip in to the little tie out point itself. Moving inside the tarp, and again, you can see the reinforcement patch where I seam seal all that, get it all buttoned up there. That's important that you do that, get it all seam sealed. Keeps all the water from draining from the outside of the tarp to the inside of the tarp. So whenever you get your tarp, unless you have the factory do it for you, you want to do that. It's a lot easier to do it on the inside when that patch is on the outside. So as I've been discussing in the winter tarp reviews that I've been doing, is when I started doing this winter hammock camping, there was not these winter doored hammock tarps available. Basically, you have two options of fabric with these high-end tarps. Seal poly, like the Hammock Gear Journey here, and sealed nylon, which is another common tarp. The advantages to the poly is that it absorbs less water and it has less stretch. The nylon, they say, is a little tougher, but it soaks in a little more water and it stretches a little more. So this is a 20 denier seal poly, and which means a silicone impregnated polyester. What you might find on some tarps in a driving, beating rain is that it might mist through a little bit as the rain just really pounds on the tarp walls. That will not happen in a seal poly. The seal nylon also, they'll normally impregnate it with something never mist or something else like that. So just off the bat, if you have a seal poly or seal nylon, you're in the right direction. Part of these winter tarp reviews is I'm kind of juxtaposing these options that were not available when I started winter hammock camping years and years ago. There were tarps, but they didn't have these doored winter tarp configurations. You either had to sew a door on yourself or make something yourself. For the kind of camping I was doing with my job with the military, and we would normally arrange some sort of spike camp that was semi-permanent. And from there I would set up a tarp shelter that had to house all my gear, and it would stay there. I wasn't really breaking it down every day, but it was somewhere I was living. I wasn't just camping, moving on, I was living under it. So I needed 4 seasons shelter from the wind, rain, snow, whatever have you, and I was with the Kelty 16. You may have seen that video. I really love that configuration, but it's just not practical for the backpacker, for someone on the move, where size in your pack and weight in your pack is a big consideration. If you've been watching this series, if you know how I feel about winter camping, there's a lot of ways to do it. There's not a wrong way and not a right way. But for me, the number one thing that classifies a piece of gear as true 4-season gear is if you can seal off airflow. That's the only issue I have with every major manufacturer tarp-specific winter tarp. It does not seal off airflow. So I've got mine strung so I can walk around in here. In a winter configuration, I would have that a little lower so I can get the tarp walls to the ground a little tighter. But still, you have 2 or 3 feet of airflow. That's air moving under you all night, and that door is heat leaving as well. And I know there's guys that do it in the -50, -60, and you can do that, but you have to start piling on quilt after quilt after quilt, and you know, more than one bottom quilt, more than one top quilt. You get a whole bunch of stuff that compensates for having all that airflow. So it's not really a fault of the company that I can't seal that off. That's the design they're going for. There are concerns about, you know, too much wind ripping on the tarp, that sort of thing. And I understand that. Just be aware that for me, my preference is that I can seal that off to the ground, because it makes an incredible difference when you're trying to stay warm on a cold night. All that being said, I'm biased towards Hammock Gear equipment because I've been a customer of theirs for a long time. When I first got into hammock camping years and years ago, there was one name for hammock quilts, and that was Hammock Gear. There was other people that were trying to be Hammock Gear, and I bought the Incubator Zero and I bought the Burrow Zero, and I've never looked back. They still work flawlessly. Great customer service. I burnt my foot box once. They fixed it, sent it back to me. It's 5-star River King guarantee. You cannot go wrong when you're buying equipment from Hammock Gear. This tarp is immaculately made. There's not a stitch out of place. I mean, it is just a beautiful, fabulous tarp. And like I say, there is absolutely nothing about this tarp that would give me hesitation to recommend it. Let's set up the hammock inside and see what it looks like. All right, hammock's in there. This is the Warbonnet Blackbird, which I've been using for years. It has been my hammock of choice for a long time. So long that I haven't really tried a lot of the other options that are out there, and maybe I can do that here shortly. But as you can see, I'm sitting in my hammock, and plenty of room to exist under this hammock, which is a hallmark necessity for me, which is why I like is about a 12 or 13 foot ridgeline, and you got to have at least somewhere around a 5-foot sidewall. 4 foot, that's a minimum, but 5 foot is much better. There's plenty of room in here where I can put packs, put my gear on both sides of the hammock. Again, I can hang this tarp lower and get that coverage a little tighter to the ground, and it would open up even a little more dry space if the if the rain was blowing pretty hard. So another thing that sometimes I do not mention is that you could take this tarp all the way to the ground and basically turn it into a floorless tent if the need arose. The Hammock Gear Journey, fantastic tarp, plenty of room to live under. Definitely will be using this tarp. Give it a 100% wholehearted recommendation. It just feels quality. There's not a stitch out of place. The whole tarp itself is just a fantastic piece of gear. So if you're in the market for a winter tarp, give the Hammock Gear Journey a look. Like I say, this is the 12-foot Ridgeline option. They have an 11-foot also. I've got the Beastie D rings for the guy out points. You can also get the line lock 3s, which you just feed your line through and you just pull it and it tensions itself. So I've said it before, but this is for me the perfect olive color, and it's a dark olive. Some people will call it bark, but it's really a mix between olive drab and brown, and it just absolutely disappears year round. It's not too green, it's not too brown. If you're looking to disappear, this is the one. For me, camouflage tarps do not actually disappear. That busy pattern is actually something easily identifiable to me. And when you see a tarp that's camouflaged, it immediately says, I'm trying to hide. And people are really good at figuring out when things are trying to hide from them, especially other people. But this is just a perfect neutral color. Can't go wrong. That's the dark olive. Hammock Gear Journey, 12-foot Ridgeline with doors. Give it a look. It's a good one.